Hi everyone, this is episode 2 of season 1 of the Lean Initiative, where we focus on getting lean, getting our health back on track. So, for this episode, we're going to be discussing our overall approach to achieving that lean physique, and there's going to be a high level approach that will give you hopefully, 80% of what you need to do and to go off from. So, without further ado, let's get into it. All right. So, in this session, so you guys can see what we'll discuss is the overall approach. So, the first thing that we need to cover is your diet, and this is the most important part, right? So, in order for you to get lean, so as you guys can see, it's the operation to body recomposition because we want to retain muscle. That's the goal, and we want to obviously lose fat. So, those are the two main things that we're focusing on. Now, a lot of issue that I see is that we focus on training so much, but we actually don't cover, or people do not put emphasis on the more important stuff. In my opinion, diet is the most important um, driver in this journey of yours, and same with mine. So, in terms of diet, the key headline is be in a calorie deficit. So, eat less than you burn in terms of the caloric intake. Now, there are a lot of nuances around that, but in essence, that is essentially what you need to do so that you stay losing fat and weight. Another key thing that I noted here is around sustainability, but develop your discipline. So, in this journey, we have 3 months. Usually it's the 80-20 rule, but we're upping it to 80 to 90%, to eat clean 90% of the time, which is eating more whole foods and less of those highly processed foods. Then 10% is to give you flexibility. So what does that mean? Is that out of 20 meals per week, if you have 20 meals, let's say, as an average, 18 of those have to be from whole foods and less processed foods. So that should be, it's literally more of a sprint, like I said, right? Like that 3 months, we're wanting to hit it hard and get the results that we want. And we want to develop those healthy eating habits. And that includes eating healthy. And that just makes it so much easier to actually be in that caloric deficit. Because a lot of nuances as well is that you probably have heard this if it fits your macros, which is, in essence, it is quite true. But if you only eat donuts all the time, you wouldn't really be maximizing your efficiency at the gym, and your health would definitely suffer. So I also noted down here that then 80-20. So after the sprint, we can revert to a little bit more, slightly more balanced, that we have 80% of our meals quite on the cleaner side, and then 20% is on the more flexible side. And one thing that I also, when I started kind of looking at my own, diet, a lot of times we're not hungry, but we are thirsty. So stay hydrated, drink enough water, at least 3 liters or more, especially in this journey. You'll be moving more, as the idea is that you have a bit more activity, and staying hydrated is key to managing your hunger. So that's one other thing here that I wanted to touch on, and that's sustainability. Whenever you eat clean, you're likely to be less hungry than if you were eating more of the highly processed junk foods, and that's through because of a lot of things, right? I won't go into it at this stage, but the next piece of importance there is, in this diet, you'll be eating high protein, medium fat, and then the lower carbs. Now, I'm not advocating for any specific thing, keto or any of those diets, but what we'll be watching out for is having lower carbs and hitting our protein. I put medium fat because you do need fats for your hormone functions, which is very important. And when I started this journey way back then, low fat was the fad, right? Because fat has supposedly higher calories. It does have higher calories, um, but if you go too low on it, your hormone function does take a hit, which is counterintuitive to your journey. Okay, so aim for nutrient dense foods and high satiety foods. So those are highly satiating foods are what keeps you fuller for longer. So I think try to aim for those. High protein is coming from meats, from eggs, from high protein foods, and try to go for medium fat. Don't go low fat is basically my point there, and lower carbs. If you do have carbs, try to go for whole foods, especially for example potatoes. It's most satiating food. Try to opt for those options rather than going for I don't know, if you go for white rice, maybe white rice is still quite okay, but for the purposes of our of this transformation, try to stay away from too much carbs. And then intermittent fasting, this is more of just a tool to help with hunger management, right? You don't really have to do this, it is optional. As long as you stick to this is more of a if it works for you, I think it's worth a try and it's worth giving it a go. And then coffee, you can have tea as well. Just drink it, black tea or just tea by black coffee or tea by itself. So, and if you are thinking of doing an intermittent fasting protocol, go for 18 hours to 6, or aim for that. You can start lower and then build up to this. You can go 20 and then 4 hour feeding time, but I feel like I said, it's optional. Even for me in this approach, I follow this some of the days, but other days I do not, and it's purely a tool in your toolbox to use for whenever you need it. And then the next part is our recovery and rest. So this is probably more definitely close to the top of in terms of important list. And our key here is to optimize sleep, stress management, and our hydration again. So this is again important to stay hydrated, and still with that fat loss and minimizing muscle loss, or adding muscle, having retained that muscle that we've already built if you have been lifting, right? So first there is sleep. Obviously try to sleep 7 hours to 9 hours per night. I can't stress this enough. If you only have this two without the training, you will still need this, is the point, because you will be in a caloric deficit and your body is literally using your fats, your storage, to keep yourself going, to keep yourself running. And this will help as well with hunger, right? Like I'm not sure if you have noticed, but whenever you have less sleep, you usually tend to have more cravings, and usually it's for those foods that are not particularly healthy, and we want to avoid that as much as possible. So try to get 7 to 9 hours per night at least. Stick to the training schedule. So some people, or some people, mostly for me, I have my training schedule, and then I go over and beyond what my training schedule is, especially with lifting. And it becomes counterintuitive because you do need those rest days and recovery days to actually build back the strength and the muscle that you have kind of like broken, right, during your training sessions. So stick to it. Now take active rest days. So on your rest days, doesn't mean to just sit around and lounge around. Try to have a leisurely walk, do mobility work, and try to take 2 to 4 rest days per week. And that will be key in terms of, like I said, in your recovery. You can do swimming, something more not as stressful in your body, more something that you do enjoy. You can play sports as well, if you are trying to get back to it. But my word of advice is be careful whenever you do play sports. The last thing you would want is to injure yourself. So try to opt for leisurely walks. Sometimes I'd go for runs. Back when I haven't had my ankle injury, so I will start to get back to that. But walking additional, like 20-30 minutes per day during your active rest days, that's perfect. Try to, you can go for an hour even, depending on your scenario. If you're more on the want to challenge yourself, try to go for an hour 2, depending, but don't overdo it. Stress management. So this is probably the things that you guys think are mumbo jumbo, but it's actually quite important. Make sure to practice mindfulness, do some meditation, and it's just good for your mental well-being. I find that even just walking and taking those leisurely walks and just being mindful of things around you, try to take your stress out of things, helps a lot. And again, hydration. Drink 3 liters of water is key for your fat loss. So again, we try to manage our hunger, but also water is key in terms of your recovery. If you are dehydrated, you're not optimizing your recovery. Cool. And the last part is your training and activity. The key here is to preserve your muscle and just increase your energy expenditure through movement, right? So resistance training is to preserve muscle, and your energy expenditure is just to add a little bit more of that. But it's not the end of the world if you do not get that. Okay, but in terms of this transformation, this 3 months, this 12 weeks, you will have to try to get some at least. So strength training 2 to 4 times per week. I wouldn't go more than that. And our focus is on the compound lifts and having those key lifts. And we'll be deploying progressive overload as our key focus for our training sessions. Cardio is beneficial, and if your current normal that you do is around 5K or below 5K steps, I would aim to just get to 5K. Right? But if it is already over 5K, start aiming for additional 1 to 2K steps per day. And you can also, like I said, do 20 to 30 minutes of cardio on your rest days, which could be just running. It could just be the walking, and get your steps in. In terms of your training, intensity over volume. It's very important that even if you just have 2 sessions per week, is you train with high intensity, not to the point that you injure yourself, but to the point that you're actually pushing yourself. So those are the key things that will help us in our fat loss journey. We will go into deep dive on this at some point. In our next episode, we'll cover diet in more detail and the exact things that I do. But this is essentially what you need to do to get you on track. So if you enjoyed that video, please like, subscribe, and comment down below on what's kind of like your most, what's the biggest pain point or struggle that you have, and I'll answer. See you guys in the next episode. Bye.